The United Kingdom has just announced a nationwide digital ID system, and many inside the country are alarmed. The government says it's about the right to work, but critics warn this is the first step towards a surveillance state or even a surveillance prison.
There's a coordinated global policy push for digital IDs as the new form of government-issued identification credentials. Digital IDs are not really a separate project from CBDCs and this new digital financial system. And UN documentation and also documentation from the Bank of International Settlements, they very overtly state that CBDCs and digital IDs are meant to go together, and without digital IDs, the CBDC digital finance system cannot exist. One of the main reasons for this coordinated global push to develop digital IDs is because it's deemed essential to the entire Sustainable Development Agenda, which is the UN Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, also known as Agenda 2030. One of the main words they use to market this stuff is equity and inclusion, the idea that we need to include everybody in these new systems. But if you don't participate in digital ID, you won't have a legally recognized identity, you won't have rights, you won't be able to access services without it. So it's being framed as promoting inclusion, but the system itself is inherently exclusionary and has been used to track and surveil people, to link people to, essentially all their activities, what they say online in some of the countries that have rolled this out, and has been used to facilitate human rights abuses. So it's not exactly as inclusive as they like to claim.
And Britain is not alone in this. Across Europe, the Caribbean, and even Africa, governments are lining up to copy this model. The UK is just one of the first dominoes, and the whole of the West is moving in this direction. So here's the question. Should Africa adopt this system in the name of monetization, or would it be more like surrendering Africans' freedom to a model that even Western citizens are resisting? In this video, we're going to break down exactly what is happening, how it connects to Africa, and how the choices African leaders make now matters more for the continent's future than ever. If you don't know me, my name is TJ. I'm Nigerian and British mixed, and on this channel, we talk about African geopolitics. So let's break this all down. The UK government is pitching digital IDs as a way to stop illegal workers, saying you will need this ID in order to get a job.
You will not be able to work in the United Kingdom if you do not have digital ID. It's as simple as that.
They claim that it's free and also non-mandatory, but that's misleading. You cannot get a passport, rent a house, or interact with major institutions without it. And that means it is effectively mandatory. And while it may not cost money, the real price is your freedom. You effectively will be giving up a new element of your privacy. And that may not cost money, but it is a very costly purchase. Critics warn that this is a slippery slope. Once the system is in place, it connects to health records, banking, and eventually central bank digital currencies like the digital pound. This creates a structure where the state can track every single aspect of your life, including how you spend every single penny. Part of why I speak on these issues is because of my own journey. I myself left the United Kingdom to start a new life in Africa, searching for the freedom that I couldn't find in the West. Here, I discovered organic food, a stronger community life, and systems that feel more human alongside reconnecting with my African heritage. But I also noticed something worrying. Many Africans see shiny things from the West and want to adopt them without realizing that those things often come with a poison. Just look at food. Africa has some of the best natural produce in the world, yet young people create fast food, burgers, chips, driving obesity and heart disease that were never part of the African story. The same goes for nightlife and hypersexualized club culture. The rise of single motherhoods is becoming a social norm, or even spending money in the club you don't have just to impress others. These are Western exports that look attractive but damage society when imported blindly. Not everything that looks modern or innovative from the West is good for Africa to adopt. The tools that the Western governments test at home often get exported abroad. Just think of the IMF's austerity package or so-called anti-terror surveillance measures that landed in African countries right after 9/11. Rwanda is already plotting a national ID system that could eventually be tied to their financial system. Barbados in the Caribbean is rolling out something similar, and the European Union has made digital identity a top priority since 2024. The pattern is clear. Once these systems become normalized in the West, Africa becomes the next obvious step. Africa has some of the youngest populations on Earth, and digital adoption is booming. Over 65% of sub-Saharan Africans are under 25. Mobile money transactions hit $1.2 trillion in 2022 and is still rising to this day. That's the perfect environment for outside powers to push a centralized digital ID system under the banner of inclusion and progress. But ask yourself, who controls these services? Who sets the rules? Who benefits when the data of 1.4 billion Africans is pooled into a single system? The numbers prove this risk is not abstract. In Nigeria, the National Identity Management Commission already holds records for over 100 million citizens. In Kenya, the Huduma Namba project collected biometrics for over 40 million people, and yet critics discovered that much of the technology was supplied by foreign companies. When these systems are tied to Western banks, payments processors, and big tech firms, it means African sovereignty, data, and finance is compromised before the project even starts. In the UK, I'm yet to find citizens publicly saying that they want this ID system. In fact, on social media, many are resisting.
So you've got your passport, right? You've got your driver's license, yeah? And you've got all your CSCS cards and all your other stuff. And he's saying you can't work in the UK if you've not got a digital ID, right? And it'll stop all them coming in off the boats, right? What a load of absolute shit. What a load of shit. All this to track you to see what you buy with your petrol and all your shopping, and you go out and buy your other little things that we need in our life, yeah? And he just wants to track you, and the next thing they'll be doing with it all, controlling what you can spend.
They're talking about whether they trust their own government with this level of control. But in Africa, governments often face weaker institutions, less transparency, and more external pressure from leaders and donors. If Britain, with all its checks and balances, can't guarantee citizens that it won't turn into a surveillance state, how much more vulnerable are African societies where leaders are more dependent on outside financing? This is the exact same pattern we saw with colonial currencies. After independence, many African nations kept their reserves in the French Treasury or the Bank of England. And I talk about the CFA franc, which still does this practice to this day, being one of the most predatory systems that the world has ever seen. So imagine being told you can't buy fuel because your carbon quota is maxed out, or your political activity flags that you are at risk. This is not paranoia. This is the logical consequence of giving away total control of identification and finance access to systems that are designed elsewhere. But if we want to talk about digital potential in a positive light, we should look at the decentralized systems, not centralized ones. Decentralized currencies and blockchain technology represent more freedom because the system itself is incorruptible. With encryption and transparency built into the design, Africans could transact, record, and manage key systems without relying on human intermediaries, where corruption usually thrives. In fact, a decentralized digital identity could give people control over their own data and expand access to banking, all without surrendering sovereignty for foreign governments or corporations. That is the real opportunity here. A system Africans own directly, but technology that doesn't depend on outsiders or centralized governments as points of control. So when it comes to these centralized models, like the UK digital ID, why should Africans accept a model like that when Western citizens are warning that it could strip away their freedoms? Why should Africa repeat the same dependency cycle we've seen for centuries, just with new technology and a new digital interface? When you add up the total picture, the stakes are clear. The UK digital ID debate is not just a domestic issue, it's a warning sign. Europe, the US, and global institutions are all moving in this direction, and Africa is squarely in their sights as the next frontier. The decision African leaders need to make in the next 5 years of whether to build sovereign digital systems or import foreign-controlled ones could decide whether the continent moves closer to independence or slips into a new form of digital colonialism. The overlooked potential of this movement is that Africa still has a choice. The infrastructure is not fully built yet. The policies are not fully written yet. And the people, the youngest, most dynamic generation the world has ever seen, has a voice. If Africans demand sovereignty over their data and their digital identities, this technology could become a tool of liberation instead of one of control. But if Africa sleepwalks into importing systems linked to ideologies designed elsewhere, the digital ID will become a passport to the new age of dependency. So should we as Africans embrace this digital ID? I guess watching the UK will be a great test case to see how their society is impacted. I would personally like to know what you think. I think my position is a firm no thank you. But if you have nothing to say, would it be too much for you to write the words "Africa needs digital sovereignty" in the comments section? It just lets me know that you watched the video to the end, you like the content, you like what I'm doing, and you want me to continue. Thank you so much for watching this video today, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
Thank you.